So we saw shocking videos of unmarked, unidentified federal officers that have been dispatched to Portland, Oregon to seemingly fight back, abduct American citizens without any real stated cause. So as those have come to light, even more have been coming out today that show some Portland police officers that are getting in on some of the violence. We're gonna go ahead and make sure they make their mark. So in this one video, I just wanna make sure you point out, pay attention to the man on the bike. That is the citizen that catches the violence from these police. Let's check that out.
Across the street from the federal courthouse.
This is Buffalo Police Bureau. The area south of Southwest Main Street is closed. You must remain on the sidewalk on the north side of Cenk. Street or come south of Cenk, you will be arrested and subject to force. Stay to the north and stay back.
So there you see a cyclist riding down the street in the middle of officers doing whatever it is they're trying to do as far as crowd control there. And he gets tackled, taken down, pummeled, and buried by several cops. There was another angle to this that I also saw to try to give more context of what exactly happened. Because of course you're gonna get people to say, the police don't just do things like this for no reason. That was 7 to 10 seconds of a guy riding down the street. Maybe he did something. Maybe he had something in his backpack. Maybe he just assaulted someone. Maybe they're following him for months. All these things that you may try and give some reasons behind. I saw an extended version, or at least a version that showed something beforehand of what had happened. I saw it at the last minute. What had happened that I saw in more context, he was riding the opposite direction at first. A cop was standing behind one of those vans, ifed at him, which people who don't know what ifing is, he jumped up at him like he's about to do something. The guy swerves because he was surprised by someone jumping out from the side of a car to jump at him. He was startled, turned around, came back, yelled something at the officer that lunged at him. After doing that, they all converged. That's the extended version. Now, if he was biking back and forth all day and kicked some cop in the face, I don't know, but I doubt that he was continuing to ride if he had done something like that previously.
Yeah, I mean, look, nonstop excessive force. So was there a better way to get that guy off the bike? Like you said, Jayar, was he committing some sort of federal crime? I don't know, man. These cops, the idea that they're here to protect and serve is hilarious. Maybe the rich and the powerful, but not us.
Yeah, so as this is happening, some pushback at least is happening from some of the authorities in Oregon. It started at the city level in Portland. The mayor there spoke out. But today, also the Governor Kate Brown of Oregon, she spoke out as well against the situations happening and the seeming takeover of the city. So she says this political theater from President Trump has nothing to do with public safety. The president is failing to lead this nation. Now he's deploying federal officers to patrol the streets of Portland in the blatant use of power by the federal government. She goes on to say, I told Acting Secretary Wolf that the federal government should remove all federal officers from our streets. His response showed me he's on a mission to provoke confrontation for political purposes. Trump is looking for a confrontation in Oregon in the hopes of winning political points in Ohio or Iowa. So that was said by them. And so just for more reminders of who these folks were, some of these unnamed, unmarked, silent soldiers that were taking over the city, they're usually in places where they'll fight drug cartels or they're stationed in Afghanistan. And that's where we've seen some of these instances of swooping in, taking citizens right off the street, and they throw them in the back of a van without anyone ever knowing where they're going, when they're coming back, or if they're coming back. So that's their MO. That's where they operate. And I think that's the reason why these specific guys were placed in this situation. So more on that approach. There was one of the men, Mark Pettibone, was one of the ones that was abducted by these silent militia group. I'm not sure what to call them. And he told a story. So to the Washington Post, he said, I was terrified. It seemed like it was out of a horror sci-fi, like a Philip K. Dick novel. It was like being preyed upon. So this is the guy that got snatched up and put into a van. He went on to say, I'm basically tossed into the van, and I had my beanie pulled over my face so I couldn't see, and they held my hands over my head. So imagine yourself in that situation, right, when you're just out in the streets as an American citizen, not breaking any laws. Blinded by his hat in an unmarked minivan full of armed people dressed in camouflage and body armor who hadn't identified themselves, Pettibone said that he was driven around downtown before being unloaded inside a building. He would learn until after his release that he had been inside the federal courthouse. One more part of this, Katie Shepard from the Washington Post wrote, the Pettibone said he still does not know who arrested him or whether what happened to him legally qualifies as an arrest. The officers did not tell him why he had been detained or provide any record of an arrest, is what he told the Post. And as far as he knows, he has not been charged with any crimes. So who knows? Maybe at some point something's going to pop up on his record. Maybe when he's applying for a job or trying to get into a federal building. Who knows? But they didn't tell him anything. But the idea is to terrorize him long enough to make him think, should I come back out here tomorrow? I don't know what's going to happen. Or maybe his friends to think.
So we covered this on the show for the last couple of days. Portland has had protests that outlasted a lot of the other cities. But both their mayor and the governor of Oregon never called for federal help. In fact, they've now made it clear, and you saw that in some of the quotes that Jayar read, that they are opposed to the federal departments coming in to police the streets, and they think it's actually very dangerous. And I'm going to get to why it's dangerous in a second. But there's potentially 6 different federal agencies that have sent some sort of law enforcement to Portland. Now, all this is vague on purpose. The federal government is basically saying, yeah, we're gonna have unmarked cars. A lot of those vans are rented and are not clearly labeled as police, military, or anything else. And they say, well, we have some insignia on our uniforms, but we will not have any names on our uniforms, even though they're supposed to. They say, oh, because we're worried about doxing. So now we have unnamed, unidentified, I don't even know if we should call them cops, law or military. They're not really either. They're federal officials roaming the streets of Portland against the wishes of the democratically elected mayor and governor of that state. So now, why are they there? They claim, oh, we're there for federal law enforcement. Which federal laws? Well, there's a federal building there, and sometimes there's graffiti on it. You brought in some sort of SWAT team from the federal level for graffiti? No, this is Trump playing politics. Remember, he said he was going to show how tough a guy he was? Yeah, I get it. This is what Pinochet did in Chile, where they just snatch up people in the streets and they wouldn't say who they were and they wouldn't say where they were taking them. And they wouldn't be officially arresting them. That's why that Pettibone quotes that Jayar read you of a guy who was snatched up from the streets are so important. He's like, I don't even know if I was arrested. They never told me I was arrested. They never told me why they were snatching me up. They didn't know, I didn't know who they were. And then they brought me to a place I didn't know. This is how people in right-wing governments in the past have gotten disappeared, okay? So they haven't done it yet. They haven't disappeared anyone that we know of yet. But they've begun the first part of that. And just like they did in Chile, just like they've done in every authoritarian right-wing governments. First, they snatch people up and don't torture or kill them. And then when nobody says anything, they're like, well, that was easy. Now let's torture them. Oh, nobody said anything or couldn't say anything. Now let's kill them. I'm not making that up. That has happened dozens of times in other countries in exactly this fact pattern. So now, other than that, other than the potential authoritarian takeover of our government, why else is it dangerous? Well, the local cops are saying, well, we're not coordinating. We don't want you here. And by the way, since you've shown up, it's gotten more violent, not less violent. So you drove up the violence. We don't know who you are and we don't want you here. And now you might get into a conflict with local cops. Oh, for God's sake. This total authoritarian anarchy on purpose. So we can't have this lawlessness.
Yeah,
Trump is. Sorry, one last thing about that. So out of the different groups that are involved, the largest one, and it likely the one that's in the military fatigues, the one Jayar talked about sometimes goes to Afghanistan, etc., is from Custom and Border Patrol. What part of Portland is near the? Usually they're in the US-Mexico border. How is Portland anywhere near the US-Mexico border? What customs issues are we talking about here in Portland, Oregon? So no, it's an excuse to start using paramilitary groups unaccountable to democratically elected officials like mayors and governors.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, I was thinking this. I feel like I saw a quick little thought about it somewhere that, because Trump was talking about how he wants to start going to these blue cities because they don't know how to handle these situations. And we're going to send people to Portland. We're going to send people like we had to do, send them to Minneapolis and send them there. It's like he's floating the full approach that he'd like to have in most of these cities. And so let's see how well this works in Portland. And then we can move on and maybe do it in the next one. Because again, it's a re-election year. And this is a traditional thing. Many times, some presidents are in some trouble. They may start a fight with another country. They may, if there's some kind of conflict already, they may escalate it to make sure that we can't change horses in midstream of this war we're in, right? For some reason, Trump's war, he hates America so much. His war has to be on our own country and our own citizens. He can be like, hey, you guys, now those Antifas are coming for us, so we got to vote against them and vote for me. Like, this seems to be the approach of usually horrible presidents are looking to start wars with other countries. He's looking to start it here. And he gets some backing in this one last graphic from Fox News where the headline, this was talking about these situations where the DHS accuses Portland officials of enabling the, quote, mob, posts timeline of damage by, quote, violent anarchists. So they quote the mob and they quote violent anarchists in this headline. And also point out that DHS accuses them of it. This releases Fox News to many of the editorializing of this headline. The DHS said so, we didn't say it. So we're not accusing Portland officials of enabling the mob. We quoted mob because DHS said it. We said violent anarchists because DHS said it. And DHS really is, there's this federal entity, this agency that we're supposed to respect and listen to. Who are we gonna listen to, DHS or just some rando? It's all putting it in the lines to make you not think what's really happening is happening.
When you sign up for a spend and save account at aspiration.com/TYT, we will plant 10 trees. Let's save the planet together.